Graham, for anyone who's about to read the book, was a toilet that we stole backstage from the Camden Palace, and we graffitied it and put the smoke machine through it so smoke would come out the top. But it's just quite funny to see Steve Lamacq immortalize it in his live review of it. It's just like the first line is, "There's a toilet on the stage. It's called Graham."
Welcome. We are Neil,
Luke and Dave.
340-somethings reminiscing on the runners and riders of 90s guitar music.
We look at the bands who soundtracked our youth on both sides of the pond and interview some of our heroes from the bands that defined a generation.
You'll hear about the good, the bad and the ugly of 90s guitar music.
This podcast is Stupid and Contagious. Right, episode 35, the Stupid and Contagious podcast. More than 34, isn't it? It was a lot last week and now it's even more. Because I've been going back through looking at old ones. If you haven't listened to our back catalogue, go and have a listen. There's some really good ones on there. Following on from that, if you are watching this, then please do subscribe to the channel. Leave us a comment below. Yeah, like, share, hit the bell thing, all that stuff. And if you're listening, then please do rate and review because it really does help the podcast get found. But yeah, we do rely on word of mouth to get this podcast growing, and it is growing. So thanks so far. But yeah, just keep spreading the word, and it will be the biggest podcast in the world in no time. Me and Dave have got a bone to pick with you. First off, I went around Dave's last night. We were at loss of something to watch.
Yeah.
Dave paid his hard-earned cash.
Yeah.
Police Academy.
Oh man, brilliant!
It's unwatchable.
It was awful.
You should try 2, 3, and 4, man.
Fuck,
One is really good.
It wasn't even sniggerable at most points. I don't think we even laughed.
Come on.
We got to how far in did we get?
Well,
Not
Neil
very
said,
far.
let's just give it until the boobs come on,
Yeah.
I didn't want to come across
which is
as
about half an
misogynist,
hour in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
Then
got
we
to
gave
there,
up.
and then that was it.
Really? Oh man, you
Yeah.
missed out on a classic.
I remember the boot polish around the mouth. I remember it being hilarious back in the day,
Yeah.
but it wasn't even mildly amusing.
I mean, that wasn't the best scene, I'll give you.
But yeah, we couldn't watch it. We tried.
I might finish it off later on my own.
Go
don't know
on,
if
you'll
you'd
love
be
it.
able
It's
to.
good. It's good. It is.
I mean, I've bought it now. I own it.
Yeah.
$3.99 to buy,
Worth
$3.50 to
every
rent.
penny.
So
Worth every
So
penny.
yeah, there was that. We did that last night.
I watched a great, I think it's early 90s, maybe comedy yesterday called Nothing But Trouble. It's
Right. Sounds
directed by Dan Aykroyd. I think is his only directing credit. Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase, of course, John Candy, Demi Moore. It was really good. It was really weird. And then at the end, for no reason, do you know the hip hop group, the Digital Underground? You know,
Yeah.
Humpity Hump and all that. They turn up with a very young Tupac Shakur who was in them at the time, like 89.
Right.
And to sing a song, and it was great. It was so good.
I just don't want to do it. I don't want to go by his recommendations anymore.
It was
Yeah, that's
it
true.
was good.
I'll give him one more chance. Anyway, I just want to share something, because I'm home alone for the weekend.
is.
Oi, oi.
The masturbatorium is
Masturbatorium.
installed.
I'm not going to.
Yeah.
I don't want
Getting
to share
full
that.
use out of that one.
He doesn't need to use it though. He doesn't need to use it.
That's
at the
true.
moment. He can just
Yeah.
go anywhere.
I've invented a snack. Right,
Oh, he has. He was telling me about this.
you get a side plate, empty out a packet of salt and vinegar McCoys.
Does it have to be McCoy's?
Yes,
Yes.
salt and vinegar.
Okay. Yeah.
And then you slice some brie and put the slices on top and microwave for 30 seconds. And it's the best snack you're ever going to have.
Cheesy crisps.
Yeah. If I was in
Yeah.
a pub, I'd probably pay £4 for that.
It's
Mm.
very Berwick though, isn't it? Brie on.
Yeah, that's like the
McCoy's.
poshest fucking snack I've ever heard. Can you put some cheddar on some Walkers? Is that possible?
But McCoys, they're not posh, but brie's posh. It's quite a nice combo.
Yeah, I can just see you walking around your larder going, oh, what have I got that I need to use up? Oh, there's some brie.
I've
Brie.
got some
Brie.
olives, and I got some hummus, which I haven't used, and some taros and malak. I can't even say. Tell you, I've been doing hanami today.
What's that mean?
It's Japanese culture, man. It's when the cherry blossoms are in full bloom, and you sit underneath and feel at one with nature and get pissed.
Oh, I quite like that.
Who did you haname with?
Oh, just a family.
Yeah,
We went to this
haname
big
with-
park though. Oh man, so many people. It's crazy. Today's probably like the last possible day to do it before like people go to work and stuff. So many people. It's nice though.
What do you-
Nice.
So you sit under a tree,
Yeah.
and just get pissed.
Yeah, eat and drink and have fun.
Sounds fun if you're a drinker. It's a
Oh,
bit-
even just eating is
you know.
fine. You know, lots of people have like a big spread and stuff. Sometimes like
Felix.
companies put like a thing on and you know.
Right, should we get into this week's podcast?
Yeah.
On this week's podcast, Luke speaks to Alex Boucher. It's a lovely interview.
Friend of the podcast.
He's a friend of the podcast. He's very active in the Facebook group. He was in a lot of I wouldn't say unsuccessful because they were. Its success is relative, isn't it? And they were relatively successful. But he was in a lot of bands that supported a lot of big name bands back in the 90s. He's got some great stories about the 90s and he's written a book about it. So yeah, Luke had a chat with him. Luke's our resident book reader, so we tasked him with reading the book.
Can I just point out, though, I don't think at any point in the interview you mentioned the name of the book.
No, I was
Oh,
aware of
maybe
that.
not.
So we're going to do that.
do
I'm
it
going to do
now.
that now. Well, the book's called 3.5 Minutes of Fame.
One of the bands was called 3.5 Minutes, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, just tell us a little bit about Alex.
Well, there's not much to tell. There's not
I
in the
wanna know
interview, so I
everything.
won't go.
I want to know
Okay.
everything about Alex
All right.
Boucher.
Alex Boucher. So he's
Born in, where was he born? Where? What hospital?
Where hospital? Well, he mentions it in the Bishop Stortford area, so around there, I guess. He's a couple of years older than us, so I guess he must be around 48, 49, because he says in the interview that he turned 16 in 1990, so he must be around that age.
That'd be the big 50 for him soon.
I must be right. Must be coming up. Yeah. Although he looks pretty young.
Like us.
Like some of us. So he was in a few bands basically throughout spanning the 90s. So he's in a band called 3.5 Minutes, who are like an indie pop band basically. Well, again, I won't give too much away that's in the interview, but basically supported loads and loads of bands, including you know Suede, Blur, Radiohead, The Pogues, all of these like bands that were also big at the time, but also went on to become big.
Can we just talk quickly about 3.5 Minutes? I had a watch of some of their stuff on YouTube. They're good, man. I really liked them. Quite sort of the Cure, that sort of music, I'd say. A lot of hair. Very
good-looking young
90s,
guys
innit?
as well.
All of them had long hair, baggy t-shirts. They look cool, man. I really digged it. Thought it was good.
Yeah. So that was them. And then after that, he went on to a band called Travis Cut, who are kind of like a pop punk band, and toured with loads of mainly American bands. Did you get to listen to them?
I did. Totally different. Punk, quick, really sort of fast tunes. Yeah, they were good. They were good too, you know. Yeah, both good bands. Very different. The first one's more my kind of thing. It's a bit darker, a bit moodier. The other one's a bit more sort of upbeat, pop punk sort of tunes, isn't it? But yeah, both great bands. He's a good drummer.
I'll take your word for it.
Well, I don't really know, but I just thought I'd say it.
You know more than I do. I never know if anyone's good at their instrument.
I think to get to that level, you have to be. Bad drummers get chucked out very quickly because a band can't function with a shit drummer. That's why they got rid of Tony McCarroll, who actually isn't that bad, but he just wasn't able to play some.
Not according to Tony McCarroll. I read his autobiography recently.
Okay.
Yeah. it's a really good read.
I like the drums in the first album. I do like his drumming. I think they just wanted someone that could play more, I don't know, a different style, I guess, for the second album.
No, according to him, it's all Noel. Noel didn't
Is
like
it
him,
really?
basically. Yeah,
Right,
and basically he hates Noel, and it's really funny. He's a funny guy as well. The book's very witty, and
I've seen a few interviews with him. He's a really interesting bloke. Oh yeah, I don't
he
think for
paints
a
a
second he's a
picture.
rubbish
Well,
drummer,
actually,
but-
it might come up. We talk a little bit about it with with Chris Helm, don't we? About kind of an insight into Noel's personality. But a lot of what Tony McCarroll said in the book chimes with what Chris Helm was saying in our upcoming interview. And he does seem like a bit of a nasty, petty kind of, I don't know, like a bit of a nasty fucker, you know?
See, I've always had this. Should we talk about it now? Let's talk about it.
Go on. Sorry, Alex. We'll get to the interview in a minute.
Most people will sort of have Liam as a bit of the roguish one who's caused all the problems, blah blah blah. That's the narrative that's sort of put across, isn't it? Really. But yeah, I've always found Liam to be the nicest guy in the world. You know, he's just in all the interviews, he's really nice. He's always really nice to the fans. Yeah, and I've always had this thing about, I've never met either of them, but I've always had this idea that Noel's probably the one that causes all the problems. No,
yeah,
I think he's probably a bit of a control, bit of a control freak.
Bit of a bully.
It's in the name, isn't it? Noel.
Yes. It was there in plain sight.
Thinks he knows everything, doesn't he?
I never got into flying birds and all that sort of stuff.
No, I do. I like them.
I just know that he'll be so pissed off that Liam's been so successful in his solo career. He must hate that.
And he kind of, Tony McCarroll says, like the whole narrative that kind of they were terrible, and Noel came along with these amazing songs and basically, you know, took control and made them amazing. He said it's all bullshit. He said he had like 2 or 3 songs and they weren't that good. And basically, they learned to become a band together, and he learned to become a songwriter, mainly from like the Real People in Liverpool, and all these kind of stories. And I don't know. Of course, it's very one-sided, but it rings true. It rings true what he was saying, you know.
Yeah. So he was probably a bad example for me to bring up about drummers. But basically, if you're in a band, you have to have a decent drummer if you're going to get anywhere, because it's the most important part, is just keeping the timing.
But do you even need a drummer now? You just get a drum machine.
A lot of people do, don't they? Just program it in. But a lot of drummers play along to sort of drum tracks now, so they keep in time with the tracks playing in their ears.
Don't need a singer now with AI. Don't need a singer.
Don't need a band. Don't need anything.
Yeah, we should release something.
What do you mean?
Well, we don't need a drummer, don't need a singer. Yeah. Luke can write some lyrics.
I thought you were the songwriter. You two claim to be songwriters. I didn't say I was.
Now's your time.
You're the fuckers that claimed you're songwriters.
We just get AI to do it.
And we can get AI to sing it in your voice.
It's probably enough. We've got 34 episodes for AI to draw on. There's probably not enough data, is it, Dave? You're the data guy.
Oh, it should be. That's plenty.
So then, after that, he gave up rock music and joined a boy band called NV.
It didn't say.
I was trying to find it. I couldn't find the boy band because I don't think you mentioned that name, or I missed the name in the interview.
It was said very quickly in the interview.
I don't think he wants you to know.
But obviously, that's what we want to know and see the pictures from. Have you seen any pictures?
There's pictures in the book, photos, And then finally, he was in a 4th band right at the end, a band called Jaff. They played a lot in France because the singer was French, I think. So they played a lot in France and didn't play that much around the UK. And basically his journey took him throughout the 90s, went to America, signed a record deal, supported all these amazing bands, and just came out with some great stories to tell, you know.
There's a book in that, and he wrote it. Anyway, should we have a listen to the interview, and then we'll have a chat afterwards?
Let's do it.
Here's Alex Boucher and Luke Lawrence. Enjoy.
All right. Thanks for coming on. I think because of the interactions on Facebook and stuff, I kind of feel like we know each other already, right? It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I know. I feel the same way because I saw when you announced it a while ago, about 18 months ago now, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
When you first sort of said we're doing this thing, and I was like really excited because I tried to do the same thing. About 6 years ago, I tried to launch a podcast, and it was called A Slight Return, and it was going to be, you know, talking about sort of bands from the 90s and everything. But I think I made the mistake of trying to do it myself, whereas you sort of, you know, you're a group and you're sort of managing to riff off each other. But yeah, it does feel like we've kind of been watching each other. I've been sort of working on this book, and you guys are just like, you know, smashing it with all these amazing guests. So I'm quite honored to be on it. It's got fun.
No. Well, the reason we got you on is, as you said, you've just written a really, really Great book, which I had the pleasure of reading a couple of weeks ago now.
Okay.
So for people that might not know who you are, can you just introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yeah. So my name's Alex Boucher. Basically just a former drummer from a few bands back in the 90s that you may or may not have heard of. And for reasons that the book goes over, that they weren't that big, they didn't get that big, but the bands I was in were 3.5 Minutes, Travis Cut, a band called Envy, which no one will have heard of, and another indie pop band called Jaff. And yeah, I sort of ended up spending about 2 to 3 years in each band or less, trying to sort of make it in the 90s as a signed band, or just to, you know, get up the ladder of becoming a prominent band. So yeah, that's sort of me in a nutshell. Gone on to do other things. Obviously, since then, I'm not still drumming anymore. I'm had a short spell in TV, and now I'm working in interactive entertainment. So yeah, just sort of took it upon myself to write a book, as a lot of people did with when they had spare time during the lockdowns, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about it when I was reading it, but you're like the perfect Stupid and Contagious guest, right? Because your story starts in the start of the 90s and it
Yeah,
spans almost the whole decade, right? It's
yeah.
it's amazing. Let's go back to writing the book then. I mean, how was it? I mean, in my day job, I'm trying to write a book at the moment, and it's
Okay.
fucking difficult, man. I mean,
Yeah.
what was the process like? Did it take a long time?
It was quite straightforward for me in that when I was younger, I kept a diary. So I used to sort of, it wasn't like a daily diary, you know, on this day I ate lunch and that. It was more of a kind of a just a exercise books. I used to buy exercise books in WH Smith's and just fill them up with, you know, random thoughts and things. But when I started getting into the bands, I was writing down thoughts and feelings and dates here and there. And my mum, bless her, she kept all the press cuttings from any time that we were covered in local press or NME. So she had this scrapbook of all these reviews and interviews as well. So it was quite easy for me to piece together a lot of the stuff that happened. And I had remembered obviously a lot of the kind of more key beats in that time, like, you know, the time the band got was playing a gig and we got invaded by neo-Nazis and things like that. So those things I remembered because they're just for the grandparents, but for grandkids, sorry. But I thought, wouldn't it be nice just to get everything together, just can put it all together in this one long timeline? And like I say, it was quite straightforward because I just had this archive sitting in boxes, ready for me to go back to. And on top of that, I got a camcorder for my 21st birthday. So there's loads of footage that I was watching again that I could get a sort of an idea of where I was and what the vibe was like here. So it was quite easy for me to put it all together and bring back that sense of smell and atmosphere and feeling. Um, and then yeah, it's really just sitting down and just putting it all in some sort of narrative, really.
Yeah. I mean, how was it dipping back into those journals and
It
videotapes and
was
stuff?
It was quite interesting. I mean, I tend to wallow in the past anyway. I'm just one of those people. I think
You're
just
on the right podcast, my friend.
yeah. I just can't get away from sort of reminiscing and feeling nostalgic and wistful. So it was fun to revisit a lot of the stuff. And the nicer thing was actually reaching out to people that I'd not spoken to in 30 years. You know, like this girl Charlotte who used to sell our t-shirts, or you know, people that produced our records, or even Patty Boyd who did this photo shoot. I actually reached out to a lot of them to ask them if they still had stuff like
Mhm.
photos or records or anything. So that was actually quite a nice thing on the research side, just to sort of get in touch with these people I've not seen for ages or heard from ages, saying, hey, guess what? I'm writing a book. Is there anything you can share, either a story you remember or a photo or something? So that side of it was quite nice. And I managed to get a writing coach because I've never written a book before. So I thought, well, I need a little bit of help here because I don't really want it to be kind of like a lightweight, rose tinted look at what I did in the 90s. I mean, it would be fun to read, but I kind of felt maybe there was something deeper here. And the coach, she kind of said, well, yeah, it's up to you. You can either do this very nice kind of lightweight story, or you can spill your guts really and sort of dip into the whole darker, bleaker times and that and give the book a bit more of a dynamic. So it was quite interesting and exciting to add a bit of a narrative to the story, which is why I kind of wrote it in present tense as opposed to I did this, I did that. I kind of wanted to transport people back to how I was feeling and what I was experiencing rather than this sort of, old man writing about something that happened 30 years ago. So all of those elements kind of made it quite fun actually and quite cathartic.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty candid, and like you say, you do go to a couple of dark places. Yeah. All right. So, well, you got the drums behind you. So, when did you start playing the drums?
Around the age of 8. Yeah. I can't actually remember what spurred it on. I think in the book I kind of talk about, being transfixed by Top of the Pops. So it's probably just being influenced by watching all these people, smacking the hell out of their kits and on Top of the Pops and things like that. And it's just one of those things where I say to my parents, I'm interested in something, and they go, okay, well, let's give it a go, see how you like it. And I was just lucky to have a really good drum teacher, someone that I liked. I think that's quite an important thing for anyone learning an instrument or anything. If you don't get on with your teacher, you're probably not going to stick with it. So yeah, I just ended up sort of for the next 8 years visiting my drum teacher's house where he had his little, classroom set up, and he was with this tall jazz drummer called Alan, who kind of was big into jazz. So he taught me all about improvisation and using your ears and that sort of stuff. And I just stuck with it, and it kind of just progressed from there because I guess I had a skill for it and a talent for it, and I stuck with it and practice. It just ended up being this natural progression through playing for the school bands and then playing for amateur dramatic societies and then moving on to actual bands, proper musicians going on the road and stuff, which was something I never really predicted, but I just kind of naturally fell into.
Yeah. I mean, in those all important early teenage years, who were you listening to? Who were you into?
Well, I kind of had a bit of an embarrassing phase of listening to a lot of hair metal and Poison and Def Leppard and these sort of bands. And then I think it was around my fifth year at school when all of a sudden everyone was listening to Stone Roses and James and I kind of picked up on Ride. Ride were probably my biggest influence from a drumming perspective because Loz Colbert's drumming is just far and away the best stuff you'll hear from that genre. So before that, it was kind of your classic drummers like John Bonham and Ginger Baker and people like that. But from sort of being influenced as a drummer playing in the bands, it was definitely people like Loz Colbert, and obviously later on Dave Grohl. So yeah, those were the sort of influences that I had.
It's interesting. I've always wondered about that. I'm whatever the opposite of a musician is. I've got zero talent. So is there a difference between the music that you like as a drummer and then the music you like as a person? Is there any separation?
I think probably if you're a musician, you're always a bit of a magpie. You're going to listen to stuff and maybe think, oh, I could use that, or that sounds really different, or that's really taking me. I think with a musician, there might be, slightly more forensic things going on with their ears where they're kind of just going, that bass line or that sound effect or what they've done with that lyric. So I think, with musicians, that they might just be sort of picking it apart a bit more, whereas with someone who's there just to appreciate it, may not pick up on certain things. But anyway, I wouldn't ever want to patronize. But I mean, knowing that I could play certain things that Loz Colbert could play and being so in awe of that, I almost, have put, some of his kind of rhythms and feels into songs that I've recorded because it's kind of like, and I think that's what musicians have always done, right? They've always kind of looked back and been influenced and thought, right, I really want this song like the Beatles did.
Though, you might, like you mentioned, like Ginger Baker, but you're not going to run out and buy a Ginger Baker long sleeve and get down the mosh pit. Is there a difference?
What, in terms of just sort of being a fan of a drummer?
Yeah. Is it more of an admiration rather than a? Like,
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
yeah, I get what you mean. It's like there's not many drummers out there who sort of, it's like you can adulate sort of guitarists and stuff because they're so amazing. And I think, yeah, unless it's someone like John Bonham or Buddy Rich, who's like one of the ultimate drummers of all time,
Mhm.
um, unless you're a proper drummer's drummer, then yeah, maybe you would wear a Buddy Rich t-shirt. But I sort of, yeah, I didn't ever go that far because it's kind of a long-standing joke between other musicians about drummers being, the dude who hangs around with other musicians and, being
Sure,
slightly stupid and stuff
sure.
like that. So whenever you start talking about, what size drumsticks do you use or what cymbals you use, it always gets a bit embarrassing for everyone involved. So, but yeah, I see what you mean. It's like, I mean, the only person who's kind of like made it as a rock star that was a drummer is kind of Dave Grohl, but that's just because he sings at the front now, right? So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's,
yeah.
it's kind of interesting setup.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, let's get into the band. We don't want to give too much away because we want people to buy your book, of course.
Oh yeah, yeah, not too many spoilers, but yeah.
No, no, but can you talk a bit about 3.5 minutes, the first band you're in?
Yeah, yeah. So that was the sort of first band I officially joined. It was really just sort of after seeing a local ad in the newspaper. Um, and they were all like a couple of years older than me. So I was 16 at the time when I auditioned for them, and it was at the end of 1990. And yeah, they just sort of were looking for a drummer because their drummer had left because his girlfriend said that she didn't want him to be in the band anymore. And yeah. So I kind of just auditioned for them, just like did a little kind of solo for them in my bedroom when they came around to visit. And they'd already done a couple of demo tapes and were sort of making a name for themselves where we lived in a place called Bishop Stortford. And yeah, luckily they kind of just said, yeah, well, yeah, you're in the band, which was amazing because I was only 16 and these guys were getting older and learning to drive and like, turning into men, whereas I was still kind of, don't know, just felt a bit fresh faced. Um, and yeah, that was the first band, and we were very much influenced at the time by, Wonderstuff and REM and Ride and The Cure and Pixies, a lot of sort of indie pop punk kind of noisy, thrashy stuff. Matt, the lead singer, had quite a sort of high pitched kind of sneery vocal as well, so he sort of lent a bit of attitude to it. And they'd all gone to a very prestigious school in Bishop Stortford, so they're all quite well educated and obviously spent a lot of time learning their craft with guitars and stuff. And yeah, no, it was just sort of in at the deep end because like the moment I joined, they kind of just said, right, we're going to do a new demo, come to this rehearsal room, we're going to put some tracks down and everything. And we're sort of recording little demo tapes on a little 8-track recorder and putting microphones everywhere. And so yeah, it was sort of very quick learning curve for me just to understand the process of songwriting. And I think for the start, the first few initial months of songwriting, they were like telling me what to play because they kind of thought, we think this is probably the best rhythm you want to use. So there was a lot of hand holding. And I think because of that, I tended to be quite a bit quiet and reserved because I was joining a band. I wasn't forming a band. I was kind of like, parachuted in, so to speak. So I never had that sort of close relationship that you might have when you start a band from scratch. But yeah, I mean, it just went from better to better. I mean, we kind of, got a lot of interest from local press just from the demo tapes alone. They were reviewing the demo tapes, and then we played a lot at the local venue, the Square in Harlow. And the guy who booked all the gigs for us there was a chap called Mac, and he was quite in with a lot of the bands that were coming up, like Scorpio Rising and Senseless Things, Mega City 4. So he ended up becoming our manager. So he would put us on with those bands. So we kind of got a very quick leg up supporting these prominent bands who would always sell out Square. And yeah, it was just through kind of touring and gigging and writing, we just ended up going on to signing record deals and just sort of just doing that very quickly. So 92 was kind of the year it all kind of basically happened.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, right? And like you say, you were 16 to 18 during this period, right? That's
Yeah. I mean,
time.
when we had to sign a publishing deal, my parents had to countersign it because I wasn't old enough to sign something like that. So it was quite random. And then I was halfway through my first year. Well, I had to do GCSE retakes. So my first year of A-levels was GCSE retakes and a couple of A-levels. And the touring was becoming so kind of intensive, and we'd had a single out and we were playing with bands like Suede and Kingmaker and so on to Ping. In the end, they kind of just said you should probably just leave school. That's the band, obviously the band and the management,
right?
Around to say, you've got two commitments here. Something's got to give. And thankfully, my parents, I guess they kind of just saw that if they were going to make me stay in school and leave the band, and then the band get huge, I wouldn't give them for that. So they kind of just, well, okay, this is difficult. Let's let him do it. Let's let him leave school. So yeah, I just didn't go back for my second year of retakes or A-levels and whatnot. And that was quite a crazy thing to have happen at such a young age as well, because it does stuff to your ego, and I think because
you're being in a band, you mean?
Yeah, being in a band, being that young, and having a lot of things just fall on your lap, and just things done for you, like whenever it was just never a dull moment. It wasn't like being in Take That, where they're just left, right, and center, everything's happening. But it wasn't uncommon for phone calls just to be coming through from people saying, can you support therapy next week, or can you do this tour, or can you talk to this local press journalist, or can you do a radio interview? So there was just a lot of things that start coming in that you're sort of sifting through and dealing with. So it just becomes quite this sort of roller coaster, and you're like going to London and having a photo shoot with Ed Sears or Paul Ryder, or sitting at the Hawley Arms with Steve Lamacq as he grills you about the band's image and stuff like that. So it was all just very quick, but exciting at the same time, because you don't really know where you might be from one week to the next, because like I say, sometimes you just get offered a last minute gig because a band's cancelled or whatever, and you're suddenly supporting Senseless Things at the Crazy House in Liverpool, and you just
right. I suppose if you've got to get up for double maths the next day, then you're not going to be able to do that, right?
Yeah, and that's how it was getting. It was really getting to that point where record deals on the table, and things are looking good and solid, and this could be sort of this could be it. And it's just like, school just doesn't seem to be important anymore. And because I think I'd flunked my GCSEs, and I wasn't the most sort of academic person in the world. I was always more on the arts, music, drama, and English, things like that. It was good that I'd had this opportunity that luckily my parents kind of thought, go for it, see how it goes.
Yeah, it's great. I think you made a couple of 12 inches with 3.5.
Yeah.
Right?
So I mean, we weren't that prolific, unfortunately, whilst I was in the band. So we had three record industry veterans clubbed together and launch an indie label called Scared Hitless. And that's what they did to fund our first single, which was
nice.
PPP. Yeah, it's a cool name. The first single was called Peep, and we put 4 songs on that, and that came out around July, August 92.
How was that? I mean, to have something that which you've created kind of manifested into this physical form of a record, I mean, and hold it in your hands. What's that feeling like?
It's something else. It really is. To sort of go through the process of writing the song, recording it in a proper studio, because we had this EMI deal, so they put us in the studio that EMI owned, and we're like doing all the professional recording of it, and then they take us down to the plant where they press it onto vinyl. So if you want, you can put an inscription in the inside.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So a lot of the, I don't know if you still can do it.
What did you write?
I think we put Shit Cells on the first one, because that's the secret track on the first EP. So like the last track on the first EP is a track called Sodium, and it segues into this very short punky song called Shit Cells. So we just put that on there for some reason. I mean, I didn't have a lot of decisions in those sort of things. I was kind of just, But yeah, we kind of like, came up with the concept for the front cover, which was these two mannequins standing in Soho. We wanted a really sort of neon kind of seedy look to it, like Peep Show, I suppose. And yeah, so once it came out, it was only on vinyl. It's just 12-inch vinyl. There wasn't any other format. Once it came out, it was just insane just to see this like tangible thing in your hands. We're like, oh my God, we created something. And it was obviously even better for it to sort of go down pretty well. We got Single of the Week from Steve Lamacq and got added to the Singles of the Week compilation that Enemy put out. So we're on this kind of CD compilation with like Carter
really?
and, all these other bands on it that had got given that sort of had been highlighted as Single of the Week that year. So yeah, all of a sudden we're kind of just like, in the press and
So how far did you get
with the band?
Yeah.
Well, obviously the second single came out in March '93, and by that point we'd signed to a big record label called Hollywood Records, who were based in LA and owned by Disney, and they were just flashing the cash because they'd bought all of Queen's back catalogue, and then Freddie Mercury died, so they just had all this disposable income from royalties that they just didn't know what to do with, so they signed us. And so they sort of had the second single came out and it wasn't as well received, but in the meantime they put us in Rockfield Studios with Hugh Jones, who was quite a well-known producer who'd done like the Charlatans and the Blue Tones and Echo and the Bunnymen. And so we spent like a week and a half in Rockfield recording our third EP, which was by that point a different type of sound because the other members in the band had changed their musical kind of preference a bit. So we're listening to like early Bowie and Velvet Underground and Joy Division, things like that. So we weren't writing indie pop anymore. It was more like your darker sort of bleaker stuff. And after the session at Rockfield, we had these 3 tracks written, sent them off to Hollywood Records, who went, we don't hear a single, that classic kind of, this isn't going to shift units. And for me personally, I wasn't having fun writing and playing that sort of music either. I was more onto the sort of, want to play indie pop, I want to go mad and, do all the fun stuff that gets the kids bouncing at the front. And it was really just by that, for that reason that I decided that it was coming to a bit of an end because
musical differences.
Musical differences. And two of the Brammer brothers as well. So there's always this tension between the two brothers where, it wasn't on Oasis levels, but there were times where you could tell that a fight had happened and we were like, okay, we just need to, give them a wide berth. But yeah, it's that classic case. We alienated ourselves from our audience. Rocker Company didn't have any faith in us. And the 3 wanted to press on, and I just sort of thought, I think time's up for me. So I had to make this really hard decision to walk away from a signed band, which was really quite tough because after my parents just going, you go, leave school, do your thing, and then months later I'm saying, I'm not that happy, and I'm probably going to leave. But it had given me that taste, right? It had given me that sort of taste of playing with bands like Kingmaker and Sultans of Ping and supporting the Pogues and Suede and Blur. And I mean, it was just a crazy time. And, to experience that at such a young age so quickly, I kind of just felt, this needs to happen again. I need to give it another shot before I kind of decide maybe that drumming isn't for me. So,
well, I thought in the book you wrote really powerfully about that decision to walk away. It must have been really hard.
Well, it was because they were quite strong characters and I was a bit of a wallflower. I was like just a bit shy and just not really not really outspoken. And the bass player Lawrence, he was quite a squeaky wheel. He'd talk a lot about stuff and have a lot of strong opinions, and the other 2 were really quite really, I mean, they're all top lads, but I almost felt perhaps I think it was a bit of imposter syndrome, where it's like, at some point they're going to figure out that I'm not that great and they're just going to sort of ask me to leave. So that was always bubbling under. But it was really upsetting just to sort of have to call it a day. Because up to that point, I was just having such a great time. And it was, like you say, really just down to the musical differences where they were just maturing a bit quicker than me, whereas I was still listening to Thousand Yard Stare and Airhead and all these cool indie pop bands, and they were just like, nah, we're gonna sort of listen to a bit of Bauhaus, and I was just like, I just wasn't ready for that, and they wanted to put that into their own music, so it is what it is.
That's fair. That's fair. And well, what happened to Graham?
See, I have no idea. So yeah, Graham, for anyone who's about to read the book, was a toilet that we stole backstage from the Camden Palace, which is now the Coco. And yeah, long story short, we nicked it because we didn't get paid by the promoters, and there was a big room out the back just full of these toilets, and we thought, well, we'll put it on the stage first, and then we'll take it. And we graffitied it and put the smoke machine through it, so smoke would come out the top. It's very silly. But it was our kind of like band. It was like our band mascot.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what happened to Graham. I'd love to know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they, because obviously I don't think we were still bringing Graham like all the time. It was like the first year, mainly sort of 91, 92. I think we were taking Graham with us. And then when we kind of got a record deal and grew up a bit and, bought nicer gear, I think Graham was just consigned to the garage.
Poor Graham. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Sad. Yeah. So, yeah. But it's just quite funny to see Steve Lamacq immortalize it in his live review of it. Just like the first line is, there's a toilet on the stage. It's called Graham. And it's just like, back, it's like, God, how childish were we? Because I don't know if this is what happened with a lot of bands, but we were, slightly light fingered, shall we say, if we saw stuff in dressing rooms or things lying around.
Sure.
We would just sort of,
Sure.
That's
That's good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, so then you started Travis Cut and a bit of a change of track musically as well. Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So Mac, who'd managed 3.5 minutes for a short time and was still putting gigs on the Square, he teamed up with a guitarist called Chris, who was in a band called the Herbsmen, who were based in Ware and Stevenage and were quite sort of well known around that way. And I think Mac just heard that I'd left 3.5 minutes and I guess rated me and just wanted to see what I was up to, because he was starting to write stuff with Chris. So yeah, it was early sound was more like Sugar, Husker Du kind of stuff, and it was just the three of us, and I really liked the dynamic of the three of us. It was just quite simple and nice, and Nirvana and Cream,
our trio.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, this could work. And yeah, we kind of landed on our feet straight away. I think just connections and things like that. Our first gig was at the Garage supporting DOA, who were like a pretty big sort of punk band from Canada. So that was our debut. And yeah, just sort of progressed from there. And we were quite prolific, did a lot of singles, wrote an album. And it was, yeah, like you say, a marked change from like sort of more sort of, nice to look at indie pop. This was more like punk, melodic pop, fast punk, that kind of stuff. Like no songs longer than 2.5 minutes, and sort of, that sort of Mac and Chris would sing their own songs. So there was quite a nice dynamic where, Chris would sing a song, Mac would sing a song, and there'd be a different kind of sound coming out from there. And, a lot of Mac's lyrics were quite emotional and heartfelt and personal. So, we were kind of like basically writing punk-filled love songs, really. But yeah, it was just fun for me to be in a band from inception, and just sort of to be back on the road, really, and just sort of rehearsing and recording and gigging again. But in a different kind of vibe. This was a lot more light-hearted, shall we say, 3.5 minutes driven and quite tense at times, whereas this was like, we're gonna tour with Down by Law now, we're gonna tour with Sloppy Seconds now, we're gonna tour with the Queers now, we're just gonna do loads of crazy stuff and put loads of 7 inches out. There was no real, I think, because we knew it was quite alternative, unless we were gonna write the kind of song that Green Day would write, we weren't ever going to kind of break through and end up on top of the pops. So we managed to blag a few good gigs, and ended up on this TV show called Bored Stupid, if you remember that. It was
I
on.
do remember it. Yeah, I
Yeah,
do. Yeah.
So that was hilarious. I can't remember how we managed to get asked to appear on Bored Stupid, but we drove up to the Snowdome in Tamworth, and we had to set up our gear at the bottom of the ski slope as they all come down. And so there's Norm Ski, who was the presenter in his inflatable desk,
I'm a bit
doing all
Norm
these
Ski.
bits to camera. And the other guests were Stiltskin. Do you remember Stiltskin?
Inside, yeah.
The Levi's ad.
Loved that.
So,
yeah.
And we were just going to be this band playing him into the ad break, So at one point, Normski was going to go, "Thanks for watching. See you after the break. In the meantime, here's Travis Cut with, Had a Gun." And then he would like bound over and sort of, mosh in front of us and stuff. But whilst he was interviewing Stiltskin, Chris started playing the riff, and it's sort of, you could start seeing them looking over their shoulders going, "Yeah, can you stop that?" It was quite easy. So yeah, there was a lot more fun times with the band, because I think we were sort of happy doing what we were doing and sort of knew who we were. There wasn't really any sort of need or pressure to change our image or keep the image. It was like, yeah, let's just stick with it. So
it's interesting. All the references you've kind of given and the bands you play with are all American or North American, I guess, right? Iconic bands, Queers and stuff. I mean, did you know about that kind of music? Was that what you were into? Or was it like a learning curve to
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it in the book. Chris and Mac were way more into punk than I ever was. They would subscribe to Maximum Rock and Roll, and read up on all these labels like Epitaph and everything. And half the time I wasn't even sure if they were just speaking English, because I was just like, it's like, well, I've still got a Chapter House album in my car. Is that okay? So again, it was probably another version of imposter syndrome, where it's like, okay, well, these two are proper hardcore into their punk and get excited when NoFX do something or Lagwagon bring out a new single, and I'm here just like happy to drum, So yeah, it was a bit intimidating to sort of be part of a band where we'd go down and we'd like be part of another collective, because a lot of the gigs put up and down the country for punk bands were normally put together by a collective from that region, who just wanted punk bands to come to their doorstep, so they would just make it happen. A real sort of punk ethic, basically.
So you get these different communities, like pockets of communities all around the country. Oh, that's really cool.
Exactly. Yeah. So they're all sort of clubbed together, and it was all from, if you read about a book called Our Band Could Be Your Life, that's basically the blueprint for punk bands being able to tour the country, and that's what they tried to replicate in the UK. So we were in that system, I suppose, where we just go up and play all these lovely gigs, and they'd do their utmost to put us up and feed us and try and pay us if they could. But yeah, obviously amongst all these bands that we're playing with, a lot of them I'd never heard of. I wasn't really familiar with them at all. So again, it was kind of like just immersing myself in it and getting used to it, but at the same time feeling like I'm never going to be fully immersed. I'm never going to be like won over completely. It's just not 100% me, which again, I guess is why I sort of thought Travis Cut wasn't going to be a long-term thing for me. So
yeah, that's so interesting though. Like, you talk about the difference between those kind of two scenes. The kind of the vibe I'm getting is that like the kind of the indie rock was a bit more kind of competitive and cutthroat, and the punk one was kind of welcoming and supportive. And is that
yeah fair? Well, I think because like the indie pop scene was very much guided by the press.
They wanted to get an enemy, and they'll fuck over anyone that's in their way, basically.
And they just wanted to put the next big band on the front cover and champion them and build them up and break them down. And and again, it was a kind of the music press, the major labels, radios, gigs, that it was on this like sort of mid to large tier that they all operated on. But with the punk stuff, because it was always going to be alternative and not so mainstream, it was more wholesome in that way, because no one's out to get each other. No one's out to say, this band are great, but next year we're all going to hate them. It was almost like very much supportive and everyone looking out for each other. which again is a real punk kind of thing. So
Yeah.
on that side, yeah, I always felt like I wasn't, obviously, apart from the gig where we supported the business, I never felt like I was in any danger, or it was going to get ugly, or people were going to start
Do you
headbutting.
want to talk about that, or do you want to save it for people reading the book? Do you want to give a preview?
I'll do a quick preview,
Yeah.
but yeah, long story short, with the business, if no one's heard of the business, they're very political, left-leaning, anti-fascist punk band. So a band that everyone should respect. But unfortunately for them, a lot of their gigs tend to get sabotaged by the far right, and we played with them at the Water Rats in King's Cross, and it was indeed sabotaged by the far right. And I won't go into the gory details, but yeah, there's a whole chapter dedicated to that, which is always an interesting thing to read back on.
Incredible. Yeah. And you managed to put out albums as well with
Yeah. So we
full albums?
we managed to find a really cool studio up in Great Yarmouth called Purple Rain, which was owned by a guy called Richard Hamilton, who was in an indie band himself called Stare, who had had their moment in the sun, shall we say. And we got on really well with him. So that was like our local studio. So we recorded like a couple of singles, and then we recorded a whole album up there called Serial Incompetence. And then we recorded a few tracks with Frankie Stubbs from Leatherface at his studio in Sunderland. Did a few then. And we did a lot of these split singles. So you just collaborated with other bands and just did a double A side, our song on one side and their song on the other. So we did quite a few of those. And then the last single that I recorded with them was called Complicated, which was put out by Damaged Goods on CD, which was quite fun. And then they went, because after
not
I left,
an Avril Lavigne cover.
No, this is like free Avril Lavigne.
Sorry,
we did a lot of covers actually. We did do a Screeching Weasel cover, and after I left, they did do a cover of Senseless Things. Too Much Kissing.
Oh wow!
And before we split up, which was about 6 or 7 years ago, we were going to try and do a cover of Hey Jealousy by Gin Blossoms, which would have been amazing. Going back. Yeah, I love Gin Blossoms. Just like one of those American bands where you just fell through the cracks. But we're Complicated. That was like a really, really nice single, really good piece of work. But again, by that point, I was sort of half in, half out, and sort of looking to try something else. But going back to the drummers. Yeah, after I left, they kind of just went through a spate of different drummers, and it became this kind of Spinal Tap kind of going joke where they just ended up like having like a drummer every year. So they did a singles compilation called Another Day, Another Drummer, which is quite amusing. So I sort of featured on that, and we were on a few compilations, like a punk rock compilation and a few bits here and there. But it was quite prolific actually. We did a lot, and they carried on. They ended up touring Japan, and they got Dave Smalley from Down by Law to produce their second album, and so they just went strength to strength, really.
Nice. But again, you walked away.
Yeah. There's a trend that you see in the book about me just kind of being a bit of an idiot, and sort of not an idiot, I suppose, but kind of just not really knowing what to do next. And
I think it's the opposite. I think it's knowing when to walk away. It's the opposite.
I guess so. But I think it's knowing when to walk away, but still not being too sure if it was the right decision. But I the main reason I left Travis Cut was just because of jealousy, really, because a mate that I went to school with had signed a record deal with Telstar, and he was in this boy band, and he was just living the life, And then when I decided that I didn't want to play fast punk rock songs in random places up and down the country anymore, I was kind of just my lifestyle had gone a bit mainstream. So I was going to this local nightclub in Chelmsford called Duke's, and listening to all the dance bangers and tunes, and just having a bit of a double life where, like, one night I'm playing at the Duchess of York in Leeds, and then the next night I'm in my my nice shirt,
satin shirt,
trying to get off with girls. So yeah, it was a bit of a yeah, very kind of
Well, let's get on to that. This was the part that really surprised me, the surprising part of the book. I hadn't anticipated.
Oh, did you
You were
not?
kind of
Okay.
like a 90s it boy almost, right? Is that
Uh,
is that a fair? Is that fair?
I guess so. I mean, it was just so random how it all happened. Because, like I say, I'd watched my mate Carl just end up getting signed and flown to New York to film a music video for Telstar, and I
Mm,
just thought, oh yeah, I'd like a bit of that because I
yeah,
think I was a bit disillusioned a bit being at the back, being the drummer, and just thought maybe I'm cut out for something else, something more here.
yeah.
And yeah, sort of one thing led to another where I ended up just like auditioning for boy bands. And then my mate Carl had left his band and we just took a put on ourselves to form our own boy band because he had so many good connections. And this was like 96. And it was just the year of just going to the
Yeah.
Met Bar and like being out and about in London and just like loads of crazy things blowing up, like Oasis, obviously, and just
Yeah,
everyone
Spice Girls and
yeah,
yeah.
just everyone just getting pissed all the time, and it was just like kind of crazy. And like, yeah, and because Matt, who is in our band, his mum was Clodagh Rogers, and Clodagh Rogers was this very well-known 70s Irish singer who'd competed for the Eurovision Song Contest one year and was kind of like a yeah, that old sort of generation of all-round
Mm,
entertainers who would have their own
mm,
show, do the
right.
Royal Palladium and then, be on Jimmy Tarbuck's show and then be on Des O'Connor's show and then be on, that sort of light entertainment circuit. And she was quite well connected herself. There was a photo of her sitting next to Ringo Starr in her front room.
Mm, wow.
Um, so obviously she would pull a few strings for her son who was in this band. So that's how we ended up having a photo shoot with Patty Boyd, which again was just
Yeah.
like, what the hell is happening here?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so I mean, it didn't last long. I mean, we weren't good at all. You know, as you find out in the book, I soon find out quite quickly that singing is not my strong point, and you kind of need to be a good singer to be in a boy band. Well, you
Oh, do
not
you?
not so
Yeah.
much, not so much if one of you was a good singer, you could kind of fake
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, it was
Uh,
just this crazy
Were there any kind
experiment.
of celebrities, semi-celebrities that they were hanging out with in the Met Bar?
Yeah, yeah. So we ended up becoming quite friendly with Anita, who was working for the press team at Creation Records. And
Mm.
she's the girl on the front cover of Wonderwall. So that's her standing in the frame.
Oh, right.
So we got quite chummy with her. We got quite friendly with a girl called Miranda, who was a dancer. She was one of the backing dancers for Gina G, who did that song for Eurovision one year
Ooh,
called Who
just
Are.
a little bit.
That's
Yeah.
the one. But she went on to found Xenomania, which is this songwriting outfit that have produced songs for, or written and produced songs for the Sugar Babes and Girls Aloud and
Wow.
God knows who else.
Mm,
So we were sort of around really talented people who would just
mm.
go on to do amazing things. Um, so yeah, we were sort of rubbing shoulders with a lot of crazy people and managed to blag a pass to Oasis at Nebworth and just
Yeah. How was that?
hanging out. That was insane. Yeah, I mean, we were just at the back, just wandering around, and there's two of Take That, and there's Joe Guest, and there's Tim Burgess, and there's Mick Hucknall, and it's just like all these sort of legends walking around and stuff, and
Yeah.
like, and you kept going to these clubs like Brown's and the Emporium, and you just watch Nicolas Cage walk past you, with like two big dudes behind him, like um. So yeah, it's like we're kind of starstruck a lot of the time, just going, did I just see who I thought I saw and stuff like that,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
kind
It's
of
amazing.
yeah, it was a real juxtaposition from the year before where I'm like, just playing in punk bands and then the next minute I'm in like Browns or, getting invited to the Top of the Pops party at the Ministry of Sound,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, no, it's crazy. And yeah, we got invited to watch PJ and Duncan, aka Anton Deck, at the Royal Albert
Yeah.
Hall and stuff. They're just like ligging backstage and bumping into their girlfriends and stuff. It was just like
That's great. I goes,
Yeah.
yeah, I really enjoyed that part. Again, don't give too much away, but there's some really good stories in there, man. It's really good. It's really good.
Yeah. Well, I think, with time, I've become more self-effacing about it, and I kind of see it for what it is, which was just like a crazy experiment with hilarious consequences, really.
Yeah, sounds like a good time as well.
Well, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't change it. I mean, there's one bit that isn't fun, but
Mm,
for the most part, it was just a crazy ride of just like doing something different, trying something else, and just again not being even part of the songwriting process. Just managers going, "Here's a demo tape, listen to it, and choose your favorite song." It's like, okay, do we not even write these songs? We just pick and choose. So a lot of it was quite an eye opener for how the pop side of things work.
yeah. At the end of the book, you put like a list of the bands that you shared a stage with over the years. It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's
yeah.
jaw dropping, to be honest. I mean, you've mentioned a few already, but I mean, fucking hell. I mean, it's incredible, right?
Yeah. I mean, and that's again just from going back through the archives and seeing all the gig ads that we were featured on. Because I'd actually forgotten that we'd supported Radiohead. I actually forgot that. I didn't even realize. I mean, they weren't even the headline band. It was a band called This Year's Blonde, who, you know, obviously nowhere. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, when I put that list together, I was like, geez, yeah, this is it's quite impressive. Yeah, I'm really lucky just to have sort of shared a stage with so many of these awesome bands and stuff, no matter at what stage they were, because some of them were
Yeah.
obviously starting out, there was,
Mm,
I mean, the exception of like Blur and the Pogues, and a lot of these bands weren't at the height of their of
mm.
their sort of status. They were just on the way up, bit like us, really.
Yeah. Who were the nicest?
The nicest, Sultans of Ping were lovely, actually. Sultans of Ping
Yeah.
were really good fun.
This
Yeah, I
week's
mean,
podcast. Well, we're recording it this week. It's
oh
out
really?
tomorrow. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Spoke with the
Yeah,
drummer.
that was so great actually, because the funny thing when you're on tour with bands, you don't get to see them as much as you'd like because they're sound checking and then they disappear, and then you sound check and then you go off and do your own thing, and then you're kind of doing the gig and then you're sort of going home, or so there was never really any, unless you're sharing the same tour bus, you don't really get to tell. But I think by the last night we kind of gotten used to each other, and they sort of invited us to their little after show party. But yeah, they were such fun guys, and it's just so funny just to sort of remember their look back then, because the drummer would always wear a football kit,
Yeah,
and then the
yeah,
guitarists would stand there in their leather cat suits, like
yeah.
motionless, just playing like that, and then Niles just running around like a crazy person.
Yeah,
But I remember one night they were just taking really long with their sound check. I mean, they were having technical issues. They weren't being divas. It was just like something wasn't right with the on stage sound, and Niall just jumped off and ran up to said, "I'm so sorry. It's just taking longer than expected. We'll try and get done as soon as possible." So it's when people like that apologize for things, and don't just take the piss and sound check forever and
yeah,
then just slope off. It's that so they were good guys. I think we
yeah.
would have bonded quite well with Kingmaker. I mean, I was a massive fan of Kingmaker anyway, so going on tour with them for a few days was just like, amazing. And the only reason they cut it short was because Loz was starting to have a back problem. But again, they sort of, Loz came up to us on the last night and said, "I'm so sorry, we've got to cut this tour short because got problems." And I could kind of feel like, oh, this is a shame. There's something,
Mm,
could have been fun, could have been
yeah,
nice.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so I mean, that most bands like Senseless Things and Mega City 4, all really nice people, all approachable,
Yeah.
never any issues with any of them. It's
So
just
the counter question then, biggest wankers.
um well, I mean, again, I sort of mentioned it in the book, and I know you've already interviewed Louis, and he comes across as a lovely, lovely bloke,
Mm, mm,
Rialto, because
yeah,
before Rialto they were called Kinky Machine,
yeah,
and we did a few gigs with them, and we just didn't really gel, and they had, I don't know, a certain type of confidence about them that just didn't that just rubbed us up the wrong way. And their stage kind of thing was obviously like, rock gods, feet on the monitor, my tops off after track two, I'm like, proper sort of AC/DC kind of vibe about them, like, yeah. and we're obviously a bit more intense and a bit more kind of angsty as a band. And so I think we're a little bit annoyed that we've been put on tour with the band like this, and B, it just were coming across a bit, maybe a bit patronizing towards us, you know, and just a little bit aloof and a bit arrogant. But it probably wasn't intentional. It's probably just them doing their thing and us doing ours. But we made the mistake of slagging them off in the press. So obviously they sort of
started a beef.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't really escalate to anything. But again, I mentioned that after we'd slagged them off, we ended up getting on the bill to support Neds Atomic Dustbin at the Corn Exchange in Cambridge, and we were on first, and King and Machine were on second, and we were walking into the venue with our gear while they were sound checking, and Louis spotted us and he put his foot on it. So I think he kind of that's when the penny dropped for me. It was like, yeah, he's read it, hasn't he? He knows. So, yeah. And then when we started the gig, I started our set. Lawrence's bass guitar wasn't working, and we just thought, oh, have they sabotaged this? Have they done it? But you know, obviously we'll never know. But yeah, they weren't wankers. I mean, there's just a few bands there who had recently signed a deal and just would sort of swan about like they're kind of they're it, you know. There were certain bands like Senseless and others who are just like hadn't really got themselves a massive fan base yet, but have got a record deal and a single out, and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, we're the next big thing. So you always had that, a few of these bands that just had a bit of an ego about them, and but we probably did as well. You know, we probably had a bit, a bit of sort of, spikiness about us.
Sure. I also really enjoyed the mixtapes that you put for every year that you cover. A really good mix of pop music as well as don't shy away from the pop side, pop and indie, and
Well, I kind of wanted it to reflect what I was listening to each year, because as the years went on, my music taste did change for certain different reasons, and I think I just wanted to make it quite an immersive book where it's not just about what happened to me. It's also about the bands that I played with, the venues that I visited, the songs that I was listening to. I really wanted.
You also put the cultural context in there, the news events and films and stuff. Like that.
So
what was the intention behind that? Were you just trying to place it in context?
Yeah, I kind of just wanted, because I think, I guess the people that will enjoy reading this book are people that were the same sort of age as us in the 90s. So we just kind of remember those key beats like the Wacko, Siege, and things with Tony Blair and Nelson Mandela, and just sort of referencing the pop culture side of things, the bands that were big that year or the films that were big. I kind of just wanted it to be a real sort of nostalgic kind of trip for a lot of people, just to remember
that's great.
a lot about what they might have forgot, because you've mentioned it before in your own podcast where this is the last decade before social media, so it's got quite a special thing about it, because not everything's documented and archived. You had to be there basically. So I think that's what I wanted to get across, that these were all the amazing things that were happening, both on a global level, but also from a cultural point of view as well.
I think it's really successful. Really worked, I thought. So okay, what do you think you learned from the exercise of taking stock and writing it all down?
I think I learned not to overthink things so much. I think there was a lot of sort of, angel and devil on shoulders going, do this, do that, do this, do that. So I think, learning not to overthink, obviously from the way I treated certain people with, don't be a dick. I think I sort of had that sort of drummed into me quite quickly after sort of being a dick and learning not to be a dick anymore. I think it was good to sort of, be able to sort of confront that and just go, right, I don't want to be this person anymore, rather than just carrying on. But I think a lot of it was just to sort of, I don't know, really just, it was really just to sort of appreciate how lucky I was, really, just to be in the right place at the right time for a lot of things, but also just to sort of have the freedom just to give it a go as well, and not sort of be in any kind of situation where people were telling me not to do it. There was always advice on what might be the best thing, but they were never telling me to sort of say, just don't do that, don't do that. They were kind of, I was sort of learning from my own mistakes, I suppose. So yeah, I kind of learned. I think the main thing really was learning how to be around different types of people, because I was meeting so many different types of people, from corporate record companies to punks who live in squats to, people who, work in pop, or people who work in accountancy. It's like just it taught me to sort of adapt quite quickly to different personalities and figure out what their agenda might be, and and sort of, I don't know, just sort of understand where certain people are coming from, and not be so judgmental. I think those are a lot of things I learned, I would say.
Cool. All right. Well, we're coming to the end of the interview, so you know what we're going to ask. Which other band from that era would you have liked to have been in, and why?
Oh man. I mean, I want to say Ride, because of the fact that Los Colbert was such an amazing drummer, but if it was me, then it wouldn't be Los Colbert. So I kind of, I don't know, cancels it somewhat, doesn't it? It's a really good question. I think to be in a band like the Charlatans would have been pretty awesome, because they're just consistently good, and they're still around, and some of their first four albums are just like so brilliant, and the swagger in the tunes and the music they do, I could see myself playing that all day long and just not getting sick of it. And I think they're quite an overlooked band in a weird way, because when you think of the 90s, you think of Nirvana or Oasis, or or if you want to go a bit more alternative, it's always Pop Will Eat Itself or EMF or something. But Charlatans just like stayed the course, they've just been there, like Some Friendly with all the bagginess right through to sort of amazing tracks, like just when you're thinking things over. And so I just think being in a band that talented, and getting to record in places like Rockfield again, and playing at big levels like Reading Festival, I think for me that would be fine, and because I think it's like, when just going back to the last band I was in, I was comfortable being in that band and enjoying the songs. It wasn't about me anymore. It wasn't about, I want people to notice me. Hey, look at me, be talented, look at me, please. Because I think there was a bit of that in the first few bands, especially the boy band. But being in the Charlatans, the drummer is not, someone you can name straight away and just go, oh yeah, that's the drummer for the Charlatans. Because it's like that sort of just being in the band and writing cool songs and enjoying it, I think for me would be great. So yeah.
Great answer. All right, so where can people get a copy of the book? Is it out already? Well, by the time this comes out, it'll be out. Where can people get it?
Yeah, so you can get it. Well, it should be available in all good bookstores. You can order it from Amazon. You can go straight to the publisher's website, which is Earth Island Books, and order it straight from them. I've got my own website, which is alexboucher.me. You can go to that website, click on the link, and it will take you to where you need to go to buy it there. I think there's an ebook coming soon, so if you can't stretch to getting the physical version, there's an ebook coming soon as well. But yeah, just head to Amazon, I would say, and look for it there. And we're going to have a few physical copies out at local record stores as well, so look out for that. But yeah, pretty much.
And I highly recommend it. Yeah.
Thanks, Luke.
Thanks so much.
What was your favorite part?
Oh, well, I said I really, really enjoyed the envy, the pop star part, just because I wasn't expecting it. So I really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the stories behind it. And like you say, I think you get a really good balance of basically telling the story, but doing it in this kind of intimate style. And I think it just works. Basically, it works as a whole, and I think it's a really successful kind of rock biography. And I read a lot of them, and it's a very successful one. So yeah. But I enjoyed the pop star stuff because I know I pretend I'm like an indie nerd, but I love pop music, and especially in the 90s pop music, I've got a very soft spot for it. So I was very fascinated by that whole era of what went on, So
Yeah, I
I
mean,
enjoyed it.
I had a lot of fun writing that bit actually. So yeah, it's funny you should say that. But yeah, no, thanks, Luke. That's appreciate that.
No problem. All right, I'm going to stop the recording. Don't escape just yet. One
No,
moment.
sure.
Good interview, that one, Luke. It just seemed like you were mates, really.
That's how it felt right from the start. Yeah.
I just found him a really interesting guy. He's a bit similar to me in a way. He sort of wallows in the past. I'm very much that sort of person. He did say that, so I'm not, that's
He
what he
didn't
said.
use the word wallow.
I think he did, because I wrote it down here, and that's what struck with me.
Well, you definitely wallow.
I wallow in the past.
Yeah.
All right. I'm pretty sure he did say it, but if he didn't, I apologise. But I do wallow in the past. He did imply that he always looks back, which is what I kind of tend to do. I wish I kept a diary. That's one of my big regrets in life.
Start.
Yeah, no, it's too late now, isn't it? The best bits were back then.
No, man. Best bits are ahead, dude.
If we'd have kept a diary, because I started writing a book about our trip to Paynton. In the early 2000s, I started writing it. And then I stopped, and then I lost all that I'd written. And then I was going to try and do it again, but I can't remember back that far now.
Oh, you have to find those papers, mate.
It was on a works computer, I think, and I just never, I don't know. Yeah, I just wish I kept some sort of diary from back then. It'd be good to look back at now, I reckon. He started off by saying that he was gonna start his own podcast, but tough shit. We've done it instead, so.
He did do it, didn't he? I thought he did. He did do it, but I couldn't find it.
Slight Return.
Yeah.
Good name.
I did enjoy the interview. It was a good interview.
You're a butt.
It was one of the. It was quite a difficult one to pick things out of.
There you go.
Why? There's loads of
I don't know.
Just because you didn't make any notes, just say that.
I did make some notes. I got some notes.
Come on in, motherfucker.
Let's hear it. Let's see them.
I like the name of that band, the Scared Hitlers.
It wasn't called that, Dave.
Oh,
it was a record label. It was called Scared Hitlers.
I take offence with his comment that he went through an embarrassing phase of listening to Def Leppard.
Oh, I thought you might pick up on that.
How fucking dare he? Do you know what I mean? We invite him on the podcast and he just slags off one of my favourite bands.
Oh, but I tell you what, from the playlist last week, that song, what's it called?
Love Bites. Bites.
Oh, it's so good. That is, and the quality of the sound in it is amazing.
It took them fucking ages to produce that album. They had to wait for the drummer to work out how to use a drum set with one arm.
But how does he do it? He must do everything twice as fast.
No, he's got pedals, hasn't he?
Well, so have the other drummers.
Yeah, but he's got more.
But then he still needs to do that faster, doesn't he?
But he hasn't got more feet.
He has. They gave him another foot.
If they're going to do that, why don't they just reattach the arm?
He's got 3 legs. But yeah, I don't know why he felt the need to say that. That's embarrassing,
Yeah, we'll let him off. We'll let him off. I thought it was really cool. Well, I thought it was interesting anyway. The difference between the different communities of the punk community and the indie rock. And I guess that's true. And the kind of the competitiveness of the indie rock community, where you're trying to get that support slot, or you're trying to get that enemy mention or stuff like that, and you're really trying to get over other bands.
That's always been the case in music. The scenes that the most authentic are usually they're more underground, aren't they?
But also, it's just that punks are nice people, right? I remember ages and ages ago, I used to know this person. Speaking of Def Leppard, I think she was like president of the Def Leppard Japan fan club or something. So she loved Def Leppard and like hard rock basically. And I think it was not long after Joe Strummer died, and so early 2000s, and there was an exhibition on, and I think she was also the editor as well of some like hard rock magazine anyway. And she got some free tickets to go, and she's like, I'm not going to go. I'm not into punk. And I said, you really should go. I'd already been like the previous week. I said, you really should go. He's a really cool guy. And And I remember she came back the next week and she said, he wasn't a punk, he was a fucking hippie. And she's right. You know, punks were hippies. They were community and love and nice people, you know.
Yeah,
and
that's true. That's true.
Just got this people that don't know punk have this image that they're like these nasty, evil people, you know.
I think,
interesting.
I think a lot of people do equate punk with, you know, the skinheads and all that sort of thing. You know, that's part of it, but that's not the whole thing.
They're opposites, aren't they?
Skinheads are some of the nicest people you'll ever meet. Anyway, I go to a lot of like ska events, and
the non-racist ones.
Yeah,
I thought the word skinhead meant. I thought it meant sort of fascist.
It became equated with that, didn't it? That's the problem.
Well, like Alex talked about in the interview, like the business gig, right? So they're basically like a skinhead band, but you know, if you look at them, but you know, they're far left, as a lot of skinheads are, and because of that, they get the far right skinheads hate them and turn up and try to fuck up their gigs, basically.
Yeah, it's similar with the ska scene. The ska scene is notoriously multicultural. But the skinheads the neo-Nazi skinheads, used to sort of get pissed off with that side of it as well. Punks are nice, right?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Just
but what about idea of John Lydon? Is he nice? I can't remember if he's nice or an arsehole.
He looked after his wife who had dementia for a long time. I think he's an all right guy. I think he's always struggled with. He's been trying to sort of maintain that sort of image when he's not really like that, I don't think. I think he's like conflicted. I think he's quite an interesting bloke. And he did call out Jimmy Savile early doors, so. I'm
conflicted about Johnny Rotten. Yeah, because he is a bit of a right-wing twat these days. But, you know, he changed the world, right? Well, his autobiography, speaking of books, as we are this week, is called No Dogs, No Blacks, No Irish, which was a common sign in like people trying to rent flats and pubs and stuff back in the 70s. So he's from Irish background, basically. And that's what the signs used to say.
There's a sign like that as you drive into Berwick.
Shut up. Shut up. Everyone's got a dog here.
But yeah, very, very different scenes. You're right. Like the indie scene, predominantly sort of championed by Enemy. Punk scene, maybe not so much. But then saying that, Enemy really got behind the new wave of the new wave and all that stuff, didn't they? So that was a punk scene, pretty much, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's true. It's different from the kind of punk that, you know, Travis Scott were playing, but it's a bit different sound. But those American bands, like he mentioned, like DOA and Lagwagon and the Queers, they were fairly big. Not in the UK, but they were fairly big in America. So
was it more of an American sounding punk?
Yeah, definitely.
Like Green Day type thing.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, melodic punk. Yeah.
I liked your point that you made about listening as a musician versus listening as someone who's not a musician. When I was heavily in the Main Street days, you know, when I was a prolific songwriter, all that sort of thing, you know, you can't help but listen to other songs and compare that to your band, you know. So every song that you listen to, you kind of notice the way the song's put together rather than the song itself.
Dave, do you do that? Do you pick out the guitar sounds when you listen to music like that?
Well, you notice it. I don't know.
It's interesting.
I think people who perhaps don't play instruments and that probably have a more enjoyable listening experience.
And do you have bands that you like because you like the musicianship, but you don't actually like them that much, but you think they're a good band because of that good guitarist or whatever? And do you have any bands like that you just admire?
I can say blah, blah, blah was an amazing guitarist, but I hate their music.
Yeah, I feel a bit like that about Guns N' Roses. Like, I don't really like them anymore, but I still really like...
Get off the podcast.
Slash's guitar playing.
Yeah, so you make those sort of observations, I guess.
And people, including me, would try and learn his solos, like note by note. You know, just copying him exactly. Something that he just made up at some point.
Yeah, and then I've always said that, like, Chris Cornell, amazing singer, wrong band. that's those sort of observations you can make, I guess.
I don't separate anything at all. I can barely pick out the difference between a bass guitar and a guitar. I've got no clue. Again, let's talk about another biography, because we're biography week. In Dave Grohl's biography, he talks about learning to play the drums by listening to punk records and playing along on his pillows and stuff. And I thought, but how are you picking out each individual drum sound from that mess of a noise, especially early 80s punk sound records?
That's why you weren't a successful drummer.
And
he was.
So, man. Yeah.
There's a difference right there.
I wonder what Luke actually hears when he listens to music.
I don't know, man. I guess, but I'm thinking about the other stuff. I'm thinking, oh, okay. So I'm thinking about the setting and the context.
Luke's going by, has anyone heard of this band before? No. Great. I'm going to go for this one. No, that's not fair. That's not.
I mean,
fair.
No. That's the main thing. That's the main thing. But I guess I am thinking about the sociological context of it as I'm listening.
Yeah, but that's good. You come at music from a different angle. That's all right.
Yeah.
You know, there's no rules, is there? You like music because you like music, and that's everyone has their own reasons. I think a lot of people get embarrassed, don't they, about their music tastes and stuff. And I don't think anyone ever should be.
But you're fine taking the piss out of people, though, for it, aren't you?
I've no idea what you mean, Dave.
You're more than welcome to come back with your... No, I don't care. I love fucking Like Us Family because they're fucking brilliant. They're not, but, you're welcome to say that.
Well, you can't defend the indefensible.
Yeah, it's true. I liked the fact that he sort of left school to pursue his thing. I think it's an easier thing for me to talk about because I haven't got children. But if I had children, maybe I'd feel differently. But I think kids should be allowed to follow their dreams and stuff because you can always go back to school, can't you? Those opportunities come and go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think his choices did him any harm. I don't know how he is, but he seems fine. He seems happy. I feel a bit sorry for him in that the timing was a bit wrong. I think he was a bit young. And obviously, if you get that chance, you're not going to turn it down, are you? You'd regret that more than anything.
Some parents make their kids turn it down, I think. That's the point I'm making.
But I think they were good parents and made the right choice.
Yeah, I do.
I think it was just unlucky. If he'd been a few years older, things might have been different, I think.
Yeah, because I remember reading a thing about, you remember Silverchair? Mm. They originally had two guitarists, but one of them wasn't allowed to. When the band started becoming really successful, his parents just didn't let him carry on. And, they went on to have a hugely successful career.
Ouch.
Yeah, stuff like that. I think you just got to give it a go. You always go back to school, can't you? I remember you asked him about when he pressed his first records and stuff, and his little eyes lit up. Now, I remember when, Main Street were back in the studio.
You didn't press any records?
Not vinyl, no. But
you burned some CDs yourself.
No, but we recorded to tape, and then we went and mastered it in a mastering studio and did all that stuff. Yeah, we didn't have any vinyl, but having a physical release of your music and just going to a studio like I spoke about before.
Dave, you wrote a book. How was it when you got your physical copy of in your hands?
I forgot you're a fellow author.
Because I just did it on Amazon, I never really had that feeling of having a real book. It always just felt like a fake book.
It's a good book. If anyone's listening and they've got kids around kind of 11, 12 years old, I think they'll really enjoy it. It's called by David J. Weber. Check it out. DJ Weber, actually, I think it's under. DJ Weber. Check it out.
Ah, nice.
It's good.
Thanks,
really enjoyed it. Read it
cost
twice,
me
actually.
quite a bit to get that mentioned.
Should we move on to his other band, Travis Cut?
We've talked about that already. Let's move on to his pop career, dude. Yeah.
I have still got a thing about it.
Oh, God.
I know I haven't. Gin Blossoms. He mentioned Gin Blossoms.
God, I knew you'd be happy with that.
Not only did he mention Gin Blossoms, but Hey Jealousy, my favourite. What a guy.
Yeah.
Right?
And in the book, as I say, he kind of separates it into years. And for every year, he does like a mixtape of tracks from that year. I think the Gin Blossoms might be in one of his mixtapes that are in the book. So it's pretty cool.
Definitely will be, won't it? Who does the best mixtape?
No, they are really good. They're a good mix of kind of pop. They're short. They're like 10 songs or whatever on each one.
I asked who does the best one.
I mean, they're good. They're good mixtapes.
Just answer the question.
All right, it's me. No, they're good. They're a good mix of pop and rock and indie and stuff. They're good.
I liked his Nebworth story, but it's really fucked me off because he spent that whole of Nebworth schmoozing around the backstage area whilst I just needed a piss the whole time. It's a very different experience that we both had of the same gig.
Yeah, him mentioning Joe Guest sent me on a Joe Guest rabbit hole.
I bet it did.
I bet it fucking did. On your own in the house.
So you're in the house by yourself.
But the historical record she disappears at about 2008.
Maybe you can do that's a good idea for a podcast. Finding Joe Guest. You can track her down, Dave. Do like an 8-part limited series podcast.
Is that my homework for the week?
Yeah, I need to make an 8-part limited series podcast, true crime podcast, Finding Joe Guest.
But what if the result is just really mundane?
Yeah,
you have
to do like all those podcasts and stretch it out over weeks and weeks and weeks and make it really fucking boring.
What if I immediately find her?
You stretch it. No, you stretch it out over episodes.
Shout out to Sultans of Ping, confirmed as really nice guys.
Yeah.
And Louis from Rialto, who'd have thought it? Eh? Fancy that. So the book, I haven't read the book. We task you with that because you like reading books. It's just a nostalgia fest, right?
It's really good. Yeah, I'd say it's divided into years. He puts it in context of news and music with a mixtape.
Yeah, I like that.
It's really good. I encourage everyone to go out and buy it, and you'll find some great stories in there and a good nostalgia fest.
But yeah, if you're listening to this podcast, then my guess is you're into sort of 90s nostalgia. So
I guarantee your favourite band will come up at least once in the book because he's played with so many.
There's a link in the description, so please do go and help him out. But don't just help him out, just go and buy it because it sounds like a good book. But yeah,
it is.
That's it for this one. If you are watching, please do subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up. Leave us a comment below. Tell us any of your 90s stories. See if they're as good as Alex's. If you are listening, then please do rate and review. It really does help us get the podcast found. Luke, mixtape. What are we doing with that? You put some of Alex's bands on there.
I will. I haven't started yet because I was drinking under a tree. But it's going to be some 3.5 minutes, some Travis cut, and loads of stuff that was mentioned in the interview as well. So yeah.
Well, that's it for this one. Dave?
See you on en minute.
I know that's last week.
That's last week, man.
See you in a minute.